Zuri Kamau had spent 10 years trying to marry the man she loved, but Nairobi never felt more confusing than during those years. Every time she and her fiancé, Tendo Mwangi, set a wedding date, something strange happened, and not just once, but again and again. A decorator would cancel at the last minute, a venue would suddenly become unavailable, or a deposit they paid would mysteriously disappear. Some days, even her own parents turned cold, telling her maybe she wasn't ready, or should wait a bit longer. At first, Zuri blamed bad luck. She thought maybe wedding stress was just heavier for her than for others. But after the 5th, 6th, and 7th time plans fell apart, she began to feel a heaviness she couldn't explain. It wasn't normal. Nobody fails 10 wedding attempts by accident. She would sit with Tendo late at night, both of them exhausted from planning yet another ceremony. Tendo always stayed patient, telling her, "We'll get through it, love." But Zuri felt a knot in her chest, a quiet fear that someone was pulling the strings behind their misery. And slowly, pieces began to point toward the same person, her older sister, Imani. Imani, who always claimed she wanted the best for Zuri. Imani, who smiled too tightly whenever Zuri talked about wedding plans. Imani, who always acted like she knew better. Still, Zuri had no proof. Nothing she could hold up and say, "This is what you did." So she stayed silent and kept trying. And for 10 long years, heartbreak became her unwanted companion, while the truth hid in the shadows, waiting for its moment. Imani had a way of walking into a room and making everyone believe she was the perfect daughter. She spoke softly, smiled sweetly, and always acted like she knew what was best for the family. To outsiders, she looked responsible, mature, trustworthy. But Zuri knew there was another side, a side that only came out when the doors were closed and no one was watching. From a young age, Imani learned how to twist people's opinions without ever raising her voice. She didn't fight openly, she played mind games. And the person she targeted the most was her own sister. Imani had Mama Abina wrapped around her finger. She always found the right moment to drop little comments disguised as concern. "Mama, I don't think Zuri is ready for marriage," she would say softly. "She's too emotional. She doesn't think things through." She made it sound like she was protecting Zuri, but behind those gentle words was poison. Very slowly, Mama Abina started believing her. Then the rest of the family followed. Uncles, aunties, cousins, all began to see Zuri through Imani's filtered version of reality. They treated Zuri like a fragile child who couldn't manage her own life, even though she was a successful architect with a solid career. The worst moment came one afternoon during a family gathering. Zuri had stepped outside to look for Tendo when she heard Imani's voice behind the wall. She hadn't meant to eavesdrop, but the words stopped her cold. "Tendo deserves someone better," Imani told the relatives, her tone calm and confident. "Zuri is not wife material. She's not serious enough. She always makes mistakes." The relatives murmured in agreement, and Imani continued, "I'm just trying to help her. She would embarrass herself if she got married too soon." Zuri stood there frozen, her heart sinking. She felt like someone had punched her in the chest. For a moment, she thought maybe she heard wrong. Maybe Imani didn't mean it that way. But deep inside, she knew the truth. This wasn't jealousy. There was something darker. Imani didn't want to be loved more. She didn't want attention. She wanted control. She wanted to be the center of every decision, every celebration, every milestone. She wanted Zuri to stay beneath her, always depending on her, always seeking her approval. And the idea of Zuri getting married, building her own life, her own family, threatened that power. From that day, Zuri saw Imani differently. She noticed how Imani always inserted herself into conversations about Zuri's life, always acting like she knew better than everyone else. She saw how Imani subtly criticized her outfits, her career choices, her timeline. She even realized how Imani often accidentally created drama that made Zuri look confused or irresponsible. It hurt deeply, but it also opened Zuri's eyes. Imani wasn't trying to protect her. She was trying to control her future. And Zuri's wedding, her happiness, was the one thing Imani refused to let her have. By the time the 10th wedding attempt collapsed, Zuri felt something inside her crack. She wasn't even angry anymore, she was tired. Bone-deep tired. The kind of exhaustion that makes your heart feel heavy every morning. She and Tendo sat on their couch in silence, the latest disaster still fresh in their mind. The caterer had accidentally double-booked. Another excuse. Another loss. Another dream slipping away. Tendo held her hand and said softly, Maybe we should just get married secretly. Just the two of us." His voice was calm, but Zuri could hear the pain underneath. For a moment, she imagined it. A quiet ceremony somewhere beautiful. No drama. No sabotage. Just love. But the image didn't feel right. She wanted her family there, not because she owed them anything, but because she deserved joy without shame or secrecy. She deserved a proper celebration. "No," she whispered. "I want to get married with everyone present. I want it to feel right." Tendo nodded. He didn't push. He never did. He loved her too much to rush her into something she'd regret. That night, Zuri made a decision she had avoided for years. She needed distance. Not anger, not revenge, just space. Space away from the family who doubted her. Space away from the sister who kept blocking her happiness. Space to breathe. "I need a year," she told Tendo. "A year to focus on myself. No wedding talk. No plans. Just me." Tendo didn't hesitate. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." And he meant it. The next 12 months changed everything. Zuri poured her energy into her architecture firm, taking bold projects and winning clients she once thought were out of reach. Her name started appearing in magazines, blogs, and design conferences. She felt herself becoming stronger, more confident, more grounded. For the first time in a long while, she felt like Zuri again, not the woman chasing a wedding that kept disappearing. Through it all, Tendo stayed loyal and patient. He sent her lunch on busy days, cheered her wins, and never once complained about the long wait. His quiet support was like a warm blanket on cold nights. But just when Zuri felt her life settling into peace, the news broke like a slap in the face. Imani was getting married. Not just married, she was planning the biggest, flashiest wedding Nairobi had seen in years. Her fiancé? A wealthy, well-connected businessman named Lwandu Afolayan. Social media pages filled with pre-wedding photos, engagement dinners, bridal shower gifts. Everything Zuri had spent 10 years trying to have. And then came the final twist. Imani asked Zuri to be a bridesmaid. The message was sweet, but the meaning behind it cut deep. It felt like a mockery. Like Imani wanted her to stand there, holding flowers, watching someone else enjoy the life she had been denied for a decade. Zuri read the message twice, her hands trembling. She didn't know whether to laugh, scream, or cry. But one thing she did know. Her story with Imani wasn't over yet. One quiet evening, while Zuri was reviewing building sketches on her laptop, her phone buzzed with a WhatsApp notification. She didn't think much of it. Friends and clients often sent voice notes. But when she saw Imani's name on the screen, her heart paused for just a second. Imani rarely sent her anything directly, especially voice messages. Curious, Zuri tapped the play button, and what she heard made her freeze in place. Imani's voice came through clearly, sharp and full of confidence, but not the sweet, perfect daughter tone she used around family. This was her real voice, the one Zuri had only heard in moments of anger. "Zuri will never marry before me," Imani sneered. "Never. I'll make sure of it." Zuri's eyes widened. She brought the phone closer to her ear, her stomach twisting. The audio continued, and the next words hit even harder. "I blocked everything. Every wedding. Every plan. 10 years, and she still doesn't get it." Imani actually laughed. A cold, proud laugh. "I told those vendors she wasn't serious. I made Mama question her. I handled everything perfectly. Tendo deserves someone better anyway." Zuri felt like the room spun for a moment. There it was, the truth she had suspected for years but could never prove. Every canceled booking, every disappearing deposit, every sudden change in her parents' attitude, all of it traced back to Imani's hand. And Imani had sent this audio by mistake. Zuri didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't replay it 100 times. She just sat very still, holding the phone like it was something fragile. Her heart was pounding, but her face remained calm, too calm. For the first time in her life, she had evidence. Real, solid evidence. The mask Imani hid behind had finally slipped, and it slipped right into Zuri's phone. Zuri saved the audio carefully, making sure it backed up somewhere safe. Then she locked her phone and placed it on the table. She stared at it for a long time, her mind completely silent. No anger, no revenge fantasies, just a growing clarity. She didn't message Imani. She didn't tell Tendo. She didn't run to her parents with the recording. She said nothing, because silence, she realized, was more powerful than any argument she could ever start. Her silence became her shield. Her silence became her strength. Her silence became the calm before the storm, a storm she would choose the perfect moment to release. For once, Zuri wasn't the one being played. She was the one holding the winning card, and she planned to play it when it would hurt the most. The moment wedding preparations began, Zuri knew this wasn't going to be an ordinary experience. She walked into the bridal shop with a polite smile, but inside, she was watching everything closely. Every move, every comment, every look from Imani. Ever since the audio message, Zuri saw her sister with new eyes, not as family, but as a threat pretending to be a bride. From the first fitting, Imani acted like Zuri was there to serve her. "Zuri, pick up that bag. Zuri, fix the train. Zuri, stand over there. Not there." She spoke to her with the same tone someone uses for a personal assistant they don't pay. The other bridesmaids looked uncomfortable, exchanging glances whenever Imani barked or some tried to step in and help, but Imani always snapped. "No, Zuri can do it. She's used to this." Used to what? Being mistreated? Being pushed down? Being blamed? Zuri kept her face calm. She knew losing her temper would only make Imani feel powerful. So she smiled gently, did exactly what she was asked, and kept her thoughts to herself. She wasn't here to fight. She was here to observe and wait. During one of the dress fittings, Zuri overheard whispers again. This time, from the bridesmaids who thought she wasn't listening. "You know why she hates Zuri so much, right?" one whispered. "Of course," the other replied. Wanda used to admire Zuri. Not romantically, just respected her career. He once called her inspiring. That alone made Imani lose her mind. Another voice added softly. Imani pretends she's confident, but she's insecure. She's always comparing herself to Zuri. Zuri pretended to be busy adjusting a ribbon, but inside, something clicked. Imani's cruelty wasn't just about ruining her wedding. It wasn't even about Tendo. It was about envy. Deep, painful envy. Zuri realized her success, her business, her independence, her confidence, had always been a silent mirror that made Imani uncomfortable. Instead of growing, Imani tried to shrink Zuri. Instead of improving herself, she destroyed Zuri's happiness to feel bigger. And now, with her lavish wedding coming, she wanted Zuri to stand beside her looking small, damaged, and defeated. But Zuri was no longer the same woman she had been 10 years ago. She had grown stronger, smarter, and more patient. She had learned the power of silence, and she carried it like armor. Every insult, every rude instruction, every eye roll, Zuri let it pass. Because she wasn't planning for that day. She was planning for the wedding day. The perfect moment, the perfect audience, the perfect stage. Imani thought she was humiliating Zuri. But Zuri wasn't breaking. She was preparing. And with every red flag Imani waved, Zuri's resolve grew sharper. Her moment was coming, and she knew it would shake the entire wedding. Kempinski Nairobi had never looked more alive. The entire hotel sparkled like a festival. Gold drapes, bright ochre fabrics, fresh flowers everywhere, dancers moving in colorful waves, and drums echoing through the halls. Guests arrived in designer African outfits, laughing, hugging, taking photos. The energy in the air felt huge, warm, joyful. It was the kind of wedding people talked about for years. But under all that beauty, there was tension. A kind of silent electricity. Zuri felt it the moment she stepped inside. She walked slowly through the reception area in her soft, elegant bridesmaid dress, her back straight, her chin lifted. She looked calm, almost too calm. And that calmness made people stare. Even the guests who barely knew her whispered, "Wow, she looks powerful today." But the person staring the hardest was Imani. Every time Zuri passed, Imani's eyes followed her, cold, sharp, and full of panic she was trying to hide. Imani's smile looked perfect for the cameras, but up close, her lips trembled. She kept adjusting her jewelry, fixing her veil, wiping her palms on her gown. Her makeup artist even whispered, "Relax." But nothing relaxed Imani today, because she could feel it. She didn't know why or how, but she knew Zuri was different. Zuri wasn't the quiet, stressed, tearful sister she used to control. Today she walked like a woman who held a secret, a woman who knew the truth, a woman who was ready. As the ceremony began, traditional dancers led the way, their movements strong and vibrant. Drummers beat rhythms that shook the floor. Families cheered as Wanda walked in with his people, dressed sharply, smiling proudly. Everything felt grand and dramatic, exactly how Imani always wanted her life to look. But even as she walked down the aisle, all eyes on her beautiful gown, Imani kept looking sideways at Zuri. Quick glances, nervous glances, glances filled with unspoken fear. Meanwhile, Zuri stood gracefully among the bridesmaids, her hands clasped, her expression serene. She didn't smile too wide, she didn't frown. She stayed steady, like someone waiting for the right time. Every step she took was confident. Every movement was controlled. Every breath felt like a countdown. Some relatives noticed. One aunt whispered, "Zuri looks different today. Almost powerful." Another nodded. Maybe she finally healed. But healing wasn't the only thing happening. Underneath her calm smile, Zuri felt her heartbeat steady and strong. She wasn't nervous at all. In fact, she felt lighter than she had in years. Because she knew something Imani didn't. This wedding wouldn't end the way Imani planned. While people danced, clapped, and cheered, Zuri moved through the hall like a quiet storm forming in the distance. Unnoticed by many, but impossible to stop. And every time Imani met her eyes, she flinched just a little. Because deep down, she could tell. Today was the day everything she had hidden was about to come out. The reception hall was alive with laughter, music, and clinking glasses. Guests were mingling, taking photos, and complimenting the beautiful decorations. Zuri stood near the buffet, sipping her water quietly, observing everything with calm eyes. She didn't have to act. Her presence alone drew attention. People whispered about how poised she looked, how different she seemed from the girl who had endured 10 years of heartbreak. Then, during a casual conversation, Wanda's aunt leaned toward a group of relatives and asked, loud enough for several people to hear, "But tell me, why has Zuri never been married before?" The hall went a little quieter. Some turned their heads, curious. And then Imani, sitting a few steps away, laughed. It was loud, sharp, full of that fake confidence she always wore when trying to embarrass Zuri. "Oh, that's simple," she said, tossing her head back dramatically. "No man can stay with her. Can you imagine?" "She's impossible." Gasps echoed through the hall. Guests turned to stare at Zuri. Some eyes widened in shock, some frowned at Imani's audacity. A few whispered to each other, unsure if this was supposed to be a joke or a truth. Zuri's chest rose and fell slowly. She felt the room's tension but didn't flinch. Her lips curved into a small, serene smile. Calmly, she walked toward the center of the hall, her movement deliberate, her posture graceful. Every step was measured, every glance steady. She raised her hand slightly to catch the attention of the MC, who handed her the microphone without a word. Silence fell. All chatter faded. Even the drumming in the distance seemed to pause. Zuri's voice was soft at first, but it carried through the hall clearly. "Thank you, everyone," she began, her tone polite but firm. "I appreciate your curiosity about my life, and I want to make something very clear." She paused for effect, letting everyone lean in just a little. "If I couldn't marry, it wasn't because no man wanted me. It wasn't because I was incapable, unworthy, or difficult," she said, her eyes scanning the crowd, finally resting on Imani. "It was because someone didn't want me happy. Someone deliberately tried to stop me from finding joy, from building a life with the man I love." The hall went completely still. Murmurs started rising, but no one interrupted. Zuri's calmness, her confidence, her control over the moment, made it impossible to look away. Guests exchanged shocked glances, sensing the storm that was about to unfold. Imani's laughter died instantly. Her fake smile faltered. Her eyes widened in panic. She realized, finally, that Zuri wasn't just standing there to be humiliated. Zuri was standing there to reveal the truth. And in that moment, the room shifted. The whispers grew louder, but they weren't about Zuri's supposed flaws anymore. They were about Imani, the sister who had tried to control a life for 10 years. Zuri's heart felt steady. She had waited a long time for this. 10 years of silence, 10 years of planning, and now, it was time for the truth to speak for itself. Zuri held the microphone a little tighter, her fingers steady, her calm face giving nothing away. The hall had gone silent. Every guest, every family member, all waiting to hear what she would say next. Even the music had died down, as if it, too, were holding its breath. Then she pressed play on her phone. The speakers crackled for a moment, and Imani's voice filled the room. "I blocked everything. Zuri will never marry before. I lied about her. Tendo deserves better." The words hit like a thunderclap. Gasps echoed through the hall. Some guests screamed. Others froze, staring at Imani in disbelief. Relatives covered their mouths, unable to believe what they were hearing. The whispers turned into a low, shocked murmur that rolled across the room. Wanda's mother stood up, her face red with anger. "What is this?" she shouted. "Do you hear what she's saying?" Her hands trembled as she gestured toward Imani, who sat frozen, eyes wide, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Wandu, stunned, turned toward his bride. His expression shifted from confusion to disgust. He shook his head slowly, as if trying to erase the betrayal he was hearing. Every word made him feel smaller, humiliated, and furious. Imani's hands shook violently. She tried to stand, tried to speak, but no words came out. Her perfectly styled hair seemed messy now, her flawless makeup smeared slightly from panic. She collapsed into her chair, trembling, unable to move, unable to defend herself. The room was full of people staring, whispering, judging. For once, she was the one exposed, and it was brutal. Zuri didn't yell. She didn't add commentary. She just let the audio play, letting Imani's own words do the damage. Every laugh, every brag, every admission of sabotage landed perfectly. 10 years of manipulation, jealousy, and lies had finally been revealed, and Zuri's calm patience made it even more powerful. People in the hall looked at Zuri differently now. Not as the quiet sister who had been overshadowed. Not as the girl who had waited 10 years for happiness, but as a woman who had endured, who had planned, who had won without losing her dignity. Even Imani's bridesmaids stared in shock. Some whispered to each other, others avoided her eyes completely. The power had shifted entirely. Zuri looked around the room once, her gaze steady, and then she pressed stop. Silence returned, heavy and tense. All eyes were on Imani, shaking in her chair, defeated, broken, and speechless. Zuri lowered the microphone slightly, letting the moment sink in. 10 years of pain, manipulation, and heartbreak had led to this. And now, for the first time, the truth had the spotlight. And it burned. The room felt heavy with shock. Wanda's face was pale, his jaw tight, and without saying another word, he turned toward the exit. His family followed silently, shaking their heads, murmuring in disbelief. The music stopped, and the laughter faded. One by one, guests began leaving, some shaking their heads, some muttering apologies, some staring at Imani with faces full of judgment. Imani sat frozen in her chair, her wedding dress perfectly styled, but now looking ridiculous on a woman who had just been exposed. She opened her mouth, trying to speak, but no words came. Then she tried again. It's not what you think. I've been under so much stress. My childhood. But no one listened. Every excuse fell flat. The whispers and gasps from before had hardened into cold stares. Even her closest friends looked uncomfortable, unsure if they could defend someone who had spent a decade destroying her sister's happiness. Mama Abina finally stepped forward, tears streaming down her face. Her hands shook as she reached for Zuri. "Zuri, my dear, I am so sorry," she sobbed. "I believed her all these years. I should have trusted you. I should have seen the truth. I failed you, and I'm so sorry." Zuri's chest tightened, but she took her mother's hands gently. She didn't yell, she didn't shame. "Mama," she said softly, "I know it wasn't easy. I know it was confusing. But it's okay now. You see the truth." Imani's voice rose again, desperate now, trembling with fear. "It's not fair. I didn't mean to. My childhood, my stress, everything. She made me do it." A few relatives shifted uncomfortably, shaking their heads. One uncle muttered, "Childhood doesn't justify a decade of lies and sabotage." The words hit like a hammer, and Imani sank lower in her chair, covering her face with her hand. The hall, which had been buzzing with excitement just moments before, was now emptying rapidly. Waiters stopped serving. The photographers packed up. Flowers remained untouched on tables. The energy that had once been full of joy was replaced with a tense silence that hung heavy like a storm cloud. Zuri watched quietly, feeling a strange mixture of sadness and relief. 10 years of heartbreak had finally ended. The sister who had caused so much pain was left with nothing. No fiancé, no cheering guests, no applause. She had only herself and the weight of her own actions. And while Imani tried to claw her way back with excuses, no one paid attention. Her wedding had collapsed around her, and it was clear that her attempts to manipulate and control had finally caught up. Zuri took a deep breath and straightened her shoulders. The pain of the past decade was still there, but for the first time in 10 years, she felt free. The lies were gone. The truth was out. And now, the world could see her rise, unshaken, stronger than ever. The hall was quiet for a moment, heavy with tension and disbelief. Then Zuri felt Tendo's hand slip into her. He held it firmly, warmly, a silent promise of love and loyalty that had never wavered over the 10 long years. She looked up at him, and he smiled, proud, supportive, and completely hers. Stepping forward with confidence, Tendo raised his voice just enough for everyone to hear. "Everyone," he said, "after everything we've been through, we are finally getting married. Next month." The hall erupted. Guests cheered, clapped, some even whistled. People who had witnessed the drama, the lies, and the heartbreak now rushed forward, offering congratulations, hugs, and even free services for their wedding. The energy shifted completely, from tension and shock to celebration and admiration. Zuri lifted the microphone once more, her face glowing with calm triumph. "Today is a reminder," she said, her voice steady and full of power, "that jealousy destroys but truth restores. And today truth won." The crowd erupted again, some nodding, some wiping tears, others simply staring at the woman who had endured 10 years of sabotage and humiliation. Zuri stood tall, her confidence radiating, her poise unshakable. From across the room, Imani sat alone. Her extravagant wedding dress now looked heavy and empty, a costume for a dream that had crumbled. She watched, speechless, as Zuri, the sister she had tried to destroy, rose higher than ever, celebrated and loved by everyone around her. For the first time, Zuri felt completely free. 10 years of waiting, of pain, of quiet endurance had led to this moment. She wasn't just victorious, she was unstoppable. And as she held Tendo's hand, she knew this was just the beginning of a beautiful new chapter.